Thanks, Carlos, for the mic check on Facebook. Let's see if YouTube fires up here now. So apparently I was streaming somewhere. Yep, looks like we're live on YouTube now as well. So, and I did my own mic check because I can hear myself talking to myself while I'm looking at myself talking to myself. So we're just going to move on. Okay, so the Kasian situation. All right, so yeah, like I said, this was commented on 2-3 weeks ago. Obviously, this guy hasn't quite thrown in the towel yet, and continues just to be a real pain in the ass. So I'm going to go ahead and make a quick comment on that. Well, I say quick, but I don't really do things quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and make the comment. We'll see how quick it is. Kasian. So the situation is as follows, and there will be a official statement posted on the website here in the coming hours, minutes, days. It's actually being drafted now by our head of legal, and once it's ready, it'll be posted on the website. But outside of that nice little statement, I'm going to give you my version right now because, like I said, obviously this guy continues to send out emails to clients saying how much he loves CoinMetro, and then pretty much in the same breath saying how he's going to try to screw us. So let me just put everybody's kind of mind at ease here. So first, this was a contractor that we initially hired off of a freelancer website, a well-known freelancer website. Why did we do that? Well, in the initial phases of the company, we needed someone to handle some design tasks, and we needed a freelancer because we had no office space. So what we did was, well, you either go on forums and, I don't know, send around a bunch of emails trying to find a freelancer, or you go to an established freelancer website that requires KYC and actual vetted profiles because you assume that they're actually going to do that vetting. So from this website, we hired a man by the name of Kasian, who had a very good profile, something like 90,000 plus earned on that profile, 5-star reviews, etc. We gave him a little bit of test work. Everything worked out well. We hired him full time. Brought him on full time. Started to pay him via PayPal. At this time, there was no company established yet. The ICO hadn't even been really put together yet. We're talking about August, September, somewhere in that range last year, 2017. I was paying this guy out of my own pocket. I was using PayPal because, well, I had a PayPal account. It was convenient. Fast forward a bit. We ended up asking him to expand the team, which he did, in Romania. At least that's what we thought. We got identifications for all these Romanians, and we moved on. At some point, the monthly payroll got to a level that we decided that we now needed to formalize this a bit more and send money via wire transfer. Okay, sorry, I got somebody's saying Trump is Jesus here on YouTube. Anyway, we had to formalize it a bit. So we went to send money via wire transfer. That money was blocked by JP Morgan, and it was flagged for OFAC. OFAC sanction. We checked the OFAC list, and we had checked it before the payment. We checked it afterward. There was nothing on the OFAC list. So we disputed it. We asked Kasian what that was. He said, "Oh, well, that's a mistake, and we've never seen that before, and we get payments through this account all the time, and there's no issue." So that was a payment for about a month's worth of work, roughly $40,000 US, and this is because at the time we were talking about a team of 7 people working full time, anywhere from back-end developers, front-end developers, designers, animators, etc. That payment, as I said, was held by OFAC. It's still held by OFAC, actually. We still haven't received that back. After that, we went back to paying in a crypto for a month. The second month, before we made another payment, we checked the OFAC list again, and sure enough, on September 14th, the company to which we were paying, Kasian, from day one, was on the OFAC list, sanctioned for basically sending money to North Korea for ballistic and nuclear missile programs. Yeah. So, being on the OFAC list, I am a U.S. citizen. I am the UBO of this company. I cannot legally send money or do any business with anyone on the OFAC list. There you go. Even as a company not based in the U.S., it's not really a good idea to deal with OFAC sanctioned companies or individuals, regardless if you're a U.S. entity or individual. We expressed this to Kasian and his team, which at this time we forced them to do a basically web call with us, and we found out they were Chinese, or at least they say they're Chinese, and we got new Chinese names for Kasian. And he basically said that he stole this person's Kasian's profile. Well, he said that someone let him use it because he wasn't using it, so he let me use his profile, which obviously is not true. And now we're in a situation where this individual has some access to some emails and portions of a database. And they had that access because, well, they had access because they worked for us. And some of them were back-end developers working on an admin portal that had access to this information. And I know, hindsight being 2020, had I known these were, North Koreans funding ballistic missile programs, well, obviously I wouldn't have given them access to that piece of the database, right? But, when it comes down to it, even when you have someone that works in your office that you hire Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy, and these are really respectable people, and they work in your office, you see them every day, and they work with you for years, and everything's fine. That doesn't mean one day they might just take some information and sell it or leak it. And no matter what you do to mitigate that, you can't mitigate it to zero. So, I'm not trying to defend this, and I take ownership of what happened. And we're doing what we can to make sure that our strict protocols are stricter in the future. But, the world we live in, once you put information on the internet, whether it be encrypted, not encrypted, whatever, it's on the internet, which means, people have access to it. And I know there's this big kind of push nowadays that everybody has this feeling in their, heart of hearts, that their data is somehow super valuable. And if someone gets access to, their birth date and their mother's maiden name, that somehow the earth is going to basically, blow up and implode on itself. That's not really the case, though. I think people watch a little too many movies, and I think the Facebook generation in general has a view of what data is and how maybe vital or important or valuable it is. Everybody has this idea now that their data is valuable. It's not really, though, unfortunately. If you think about it, myself, I think if I think about how many banks, institutions, individuals, contractors, etc., have a copy of my passport, of my personal details from business dealings that I've had over the last 18 or 19 years, that list is quite extensive. But here I am. No one's gone around, and I don't know, created some type of false companies or done anything nefarious with my identities. And they probably could. They haven't. Point is to say that I think it's a bit overblown, the situation. And when you look at it, we're doing everything we can, but we're dealing with possibly North Koreans, at the best Chinese, and maybe at the best people from Vladivostok, Russia, where, let's just call that these three locations aren't the most most lawful of nations. And it's not something where we can just click a button and, the guy's caught and all the data's safe and everybody, rejoices. That's what we're dealing with. Anyway, I'm gonna now that I took 10 minutes to kind of rant about that, I'm sure I'm gonna rant about it a bit more because I bet you we have some questions about it. I'm gonna jump into the news articles from last week because that's usually where we start. Anyway, we had to get this Kasian thing off of our, I guess, collective chests. So hopefully, maybe I did that. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Maybe people are just more pissed off. I don't really know. But we'll see what happens when we get to the AMA. I'm going to jump into the news. So we have 10 news articles from last week. Number one on a list of 10, top crypto exchange Binance adds Circle's USD coin in latest stablecoin support move. This stablecoin nonsense is really starting to kind of get on the wrong side of my brain here. I actually just wrote a piece for Bitcoin.com. So if you go to news.bitcoin.com right now, look for the stablecoin piece. You'll see it. I think it's still on the homepage, if I'm not mistaken. I think I also posted it on LinkedIn, so people can find the link there. All these stablecoins that are created by private companies are kind of horseshit. I mean, I'm not really sure the better word to put behind it, but they're just horseshit. There's an underlying need for ease of liquidity transfer, ease of asset transfer, ease of liquidity settlement. And in those eyes, a quote-unquote stablecoin, but that's actually stable, like none of this fluctuating price nonsense, but it's actually fixed value to whether it be a fiat currency or something else, there is a use case on the back end for these type of things. On the front end, however, there is completely no, the use case is minimal at best. Now, why are these exchanges like Binance, like Coinbase, like whatever, Circle, issuing stablecoins? Well, people trade them. Tether is like the second most traded asset right now. And, exchanges make money from trade volume. So people are going to trade it. They're probably going to list it. Do I think that smarter people at these different businesses actually believe that stablecoins are the future, or they're somehow solving a problem? No, I can't believe that because they're not solving a problem. They're basically putting a Band-Aid on a much larger systemic issue, which is, how about you guys get some banking and some fiat currencies on your platform so that you don't need to create a fake fiat currency backed by an individual company that I now need to trust. And I also need to trust the actual fiat underneath, but I also need to trust the company that supposedly is backing this token because, well, there's really no transparency and no insight until if they're actually doing this, except for maybe some ridiculous letter from a bank somewhere in the middle of nowhere that nobody really cares about. So, I do think that the move is really based on demand. And a lot of these companies are coming out with stablecoins because why not? You know how easy it is? You just create a token and go, okay, I'm going to put 100,000 into this account. Now here's 100,000 tokens. Boom, go ahead. It's, and it creates volume. People literally jump on these things to trade them for some reason, and it creates volume. And again, all ties back to most of the things that happen in this market. It's immature. If you came out right now with the USD stable share on the NASDAQ, nobody would trade it. People would call you an idiot. They wouldn't even list it. And just for mentioning the fact that you'd like to create this basically useless asset, you'd probably end up getting laughed out of the room. But, we don't have any regulation. There's really no framework, and everybody does whatever they want. And because Tether has a whole bunch of people trading it, obviously these guys want a piece of the action. Number 2 on a list of 10, crypto civil war slams Bitcoin, but it won't last, says BKCM's Brian Kelly. BKCM. The hell is that? Let me pull this up because that acronym is escaping me. BKCM. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. It's just the whole story is just a bunch of acronyms. BKCM. It never really says what that is though. Maybe somebody knows and can post because I have no idea what BKCM is. Anyway. Beside the point, I guess. So the story basically saying that because of this Bitcoin fork, a Bitcoin Cash fork, and that people aren't really in consensus here, and there's two sides, and one side wants to go one way and the other side wants to go the other way, that somehow people got freaked out that Bitcoin was going to implode. I don't know how much weight, to be honest, I put behind that. There was also, by the way, on the 14th, an expiration of a Bitcoin option on the CBOE, which definitely caused some sell-off for sure. I think that might have triggered some more selling and some more stop-outs than perhaps the Bitcoin Cash situation did. Though, when Bitcoin Cash did start to tank because of this, let's say, instability, or the fact that people can't really get behind one side or the other, and it's showing that, again, immaturity in the market. I've never seen a company do a stock split where half the investors were like, no, we should do it like this, and then somehow they did it both ways just to see what worked out best. So all that instability obviously caused Bitcoin Cash to see a bit of a sell-off. And while they shouldn't be, crypto in general, there seems to be at least people, for some reason, when they see one crypto sell off, they assume everything's going to sell off and they start selling off what they have. So yeah, it could have triggered a chain event, though I don't think there's a direct correlation, to be quite honest. I think more correlation is behind the CBOE expiration, the option expiration. And both of them combined probably pushed a bit lower. But to be honest, we've seen a lull in the market for quite some time. There obviously wasn't enough buy pressure to make it go higher. So there obviously wasn't enough sell pressure to make it go lower, which generally means we either had neutral pressure on both sides. And what that means is that we need a catalyst to go one way or another. So you had a catalyst. You had an expiration on an option, and you had all this nonsense going on at Bitcoin Cash, which basically gave some negative news out into the market. And it was enough negative news to push through one level of support or resistance, or one level of support to the downside, and then you saw some, capitulation. So I don't know if I'd say it was all Bitcoin Cash's fault, but obviously, this is a problem. It's a problem when, everybody here, most of the industry, let's say, likes the decentralization aspects. They don't want power in one individual. But now you're seeing why sometimes power with one individual or body kind of makes sense when it comes to fiscal and financial responsibility, right? Because when you have nobody holds the responsibility, and you get a guy that, got arrested selling fireworks, and another guy that basically got, arrested for doing something else, both have these two camps. And one of them's like, we're the fireworks guys, and we want to go this way. And the other guy's like, no, we're the other guys that can't work in, regular finance, so we're in crypto, and we want to go this way. How it can cause an issue, right? So decentralization is great, but when you're decentralized and still kind of centralized between two sides, it's not really the best position to be in, unfortunately. All right, moving on. Number 3 out of a list of 10, XRP emerges as a phoenix among fallen angels, attempts to cope with the crash. I like how, it's not really a crash, guys. Come on, we've seen worse days than this. We've seen worse times than this. This is kind of like your 6 months ago, this would have just been, a Thursday or whatever, or Wednesday in the crypto market. But because we've seen this lull, now everybody's reverting, crash and whatever, imminent disaster. The difference, what I just talked about with Bitcoin, with XRP, you do have centralization here. So you have a body who is the Ripple Foundation, who basically controls kind of monetary policy around XRP, right? And that's why it didn't crash. Simple as that. It's the same reason why when you see, let's say, flight to stability, when you have, and in the past, when you used to have fiat currencies, where let's say the dollar was falling, the euro was falling, etc., everybody would go to the Swiss franc or the Japanese yen. Because they'd run away to where they'd run away to currencies that were somewhat stabilized. Let's say stablecoins in the fiat realm. And here you're having people that are looking at these, that might be looking at this market and going, Jesus Christ, Jesus is a good word. Bitcoin Jesus is trying to fork one way, and we got right trying to fork the other way. And now nobody knows what's going to happen, and all this instability is telling me I better get my money out of the market. Where should I put it? And they go, well, XRP has a foundation, they're working with banks. Well, a little less volatile. I think I'll go there. So I don't, it emerges that way because, and it's funny because obviously most of the money you talk to in crypto, most of the people that are vocal in crypto are all about decentralization, moving money away from banks, Ripple's the anti-crypto, blah, 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 blah. But look what happens when the shit hits the fan. Money goes to Ripple. So, you can kind of digest that any way you want. But number 5 on a list of 10, or number 4, sorry, XRP receives official support from Coinbase custody. Ripple logo represents the coin. It's one of the more traded pairs. It looks like it's starting to become a bit of a store of value as well, like Bitcoin. Big market players, I think, probably would be a little bit less hesitant to hold funds in Ripple than they would in other assets. So, makes sense. It was probably inevitable regardless because it is in the top 5, I think, if not the top 10. Whether it fluctuates from day to day, it's definitely within the top 10, sometime within the top 5. At some points, it's in the top 3. So looking where the liquidity is, when you talk about custodial relationships, you're talking about more than likely larger funds. Larger funds look to where the liquidity is. Nobody wants to put money in something that's illiquid because it's inherently higher risk. Number 5 on a list of 10, Ripple is aiming to overtake Swift banking network. Yeah, great. So is everybody else and their grandmother since 1975. Swift is still Swift. I'm glad that Ripple wants to overtake them. That's awesome. They're not in a position to do that right now. Nobody's really in a position to do that right now. There's no blockchain, there's no technology, there's no company right now that has what it takes to take over Swift. And I'll tell you mainly why. It's not even because of scalability or superior technology or whatever. It's because banks have antiquated systems and they work with Swift. Literally, there are banks right now that control billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars and euros worth of assets that use systems based on DDoS, that use systems that were written initially for DDoS and tape-driven backups that still use some of that technology in different pieces of the ecosystem. And SWIFT works. And there's no reason, and there's no way, and they have no ability to change, because it would require hundreds of millions in investment and risk on their part to change to a new system. So that's it. It has nothing to do, I mean, obviously there's scalability issues. Obviously SWIFT is still faster than pretty much any blockchain under the sun, and obviously it's much less error prone. I mean, it sucks when you get your money stuck between two banks for 45 days and they tell you, nonsense replies like, we're looking into it. The MT-103 was sent to the receiver bank and the beneficiary bank is now blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, adding in a more advanced system isn't going to change that, because when banks control the operation, they can still control the narrative. Doesn't matter how transparent the underlying system is. But yeah, good on Ripple. I hope they change the SWIFT network. I hope somebody does in my lifetime. But it's not going to be easy. And it has nothing to do with, scalability or the awesomeness of the technology. It has to do with the fact that banks are built on antiquated shit. And, you need to unantiquate them, which, good luck with that. So not that nobody has tried, because many people have tried. Everybody's failed up to this point. At some point, someone won't fail. Will it be Ripple? I don't know. Number 6 on a list of 10, Bitcoin is the evil spawn of the financial crisis, European Central Bank board member. Well, this guy's awesome. Where can I buy this guy a coffee or a beer? He seems like he'd be a real fun date. So, evil spawn of the financial crisis. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I would say he's right that it's a spawn of the financial crisis. That's why the white paper was written. Obviously, it's still up in the air who wrote it. Maybe this guy wrote it. Maybe this is all part of the grand conspiracy to make people still think they shouldn't use it. So they use it because they're being told not to. And then the banks come in and go, thanks for using this so we can now track all your money. Idiots. I don't know. At the end of the day, though, I think, all crises, what emerges from a crisis are solutions. Right? Nobody wants to hear somebody that talks about problems when there's a crisis. Like, when there's already a crisis, the guy who comes out, that's the wet blanket or whatever, is like, oh my God, I have another issue. Nobody wants to hear that guy. The only thing people want to hear in a crisis is, I have a solution. Here's a possible solution. And the Bitcoin white paper was a possible solution. Obviously, from the initial white paper now 10 years later, I think Bitcoin is not what the white paper envisioned. Though that could have been the goal of the white paper, to be quite honest. All depends on who wrote it. I don't know the exact context of this evil spawn of the financial crisis, but I think if this European central banker knew anything about banking, inside his head somewhere, he's thinking, God, I hope that blockchain technology is adopted across banking so that when, Danske Bank decides to launder another 245 billion euros, we might actually be able to find out how, when, and why, and maybe stop it beforehand because, that's my job as a central banker. So either that or he's just too stupid to see it, which, is a possibility. I've met a lot of people in finance that are too stupid to see, between the lines. And I met a lot of people that are smart and can already see between the lines, but they're too scared to put their voice up there and make an opinion. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you kind of try to reinvent the wheel. It's either that, or like I've been saying, Bitcoin and blockchain basically become just another tool set in the tool belt of the central bankers. And that would totally go against what the white paper was, though it probably would lead to mass adoption. So, what side are you on? Let's keep this only between, a very small subset of the population, or let's integrate this with the current banking system, have it have mass adoption, but let's go against pretty much everything that the white paper stood for. So, I don't know. Choose a side. Number 7 on a list of 10, Thai SEC urges public to avoid unlicensed crypto exchange as regulation set to take effect. Makes sense. Regulator sets regulation, tells you not to use unregulated exchanges. Is that news? Not really sure. Makes sense. I mean, why would they make, if no regulator is going to say, look, we just made all this regulation, but, go ahead and use unregulated exchanges because, what we're doing makes no sense. Just kind of makes sense. Moving on. Number 8, on the list of 10, Arthur Hayes of crypto exchange BitMEX says trading against his own clients is nonsensical. Well, I can't say that I know Arthur Hayes. Obviously, I know what BitMEX is. I know the types of products they offer. 100 to 1 leverage on synthetic instruments. Whether they trade against their clients. Look, I've been in the FX industry for years. Almost every single FX broker, starting from right around 2006, 7, and 8, started to say that they don't trade against their clients and they're pure ECN and that they're STP, straight through processing, and they take on no risk. Why did they do that? PR. Why? Because clients started to realize that brokers were trading against them. And even though, to be quite honest, a broker trading against you is not necessarily a bad thing. It sounds bad. The view there is that, I'm doing one thing, they're doing another, they're bigger than me, they're going to win. But that's not true at all. The market is liquid enough where they could trade against you all they want. You could still win. Trading against you just means they take the opposite side of the position, which means they're making a market. Which means, hey, you want to buy, no one's selling, we're going to sell to you. You could win, we could win. Just because we're selling to you doesn't mean we're going to win. I mean, more than likely we'll win because most retail traders lose money. But you may still win. The fact that we're trading against you or on the opposite side of you. So I don't know if this is a PR move more than anything else, because when you come out and say, look, we trade against our clients, people get pissed because they don't understand what it means. If I looked at their model, I would say they probably trade against their clients. That doesn't mean they do. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. But I know for a fact that many retail FX brokers say they don't trade against their clients, and they do. And it's been proven time and time again. FXCM in the US was one big case. For years, FXCM basically had an offshore entity that they owned that provided liquidity on their own platforms, and they basically used that to trade against their own clients. But they said a liquidity provider was doing it, but they own the liquidity provider. So, in this case, I don't know if they are. I would say, though, based on the type of products they offer, the amount of volume that trades through that exchange, the amount of synthetic volume that's traded, and the fact that at all times there is liquidity on both sides of the book, somebody is definitely taking the opposite side, and that may or may not be an entity owned by BitMEX, or maybe BitMEX themselves, or maybe it's not. But I think Arthur could have done better for himself here by explaining the fact that taking the other side of an order is how markets work. You can call it trading against, which, sounds really bad. But if no one's trading against you in that context, there's no market. So, you might as well just pack up and go home. And I think somebody needs to educate people on that. So if I was Arthur, I would have took that stance. If I'm actually not doing it, well, obviously I would have said I'm not doing it. But I still would have made the point to say that somebody has to do it. So whether it's me or someone else, if no one's doing it, there's nothing to trade. Number 9 on a list of 10, EOS reverses previously confirmed transactions as pundits decry centralization. Well, the pundits are right. I had a look at this really briefly, and what hits me on this one is, EOS raised $4 billion to create a system that supposedly was going to be so much better than the traditional financial and banking and payment system. And they've created a system where some random asshole who gets elected or put in a position to be a moderator or whatever they're calling it can just, reset transactions. So how does that any better than, PayPal, who lots of people hate because they can just reverse transactions, or a bank who there's someone sitting in an office somewhere that was trained to look at, transactions they think need to be reversed and reverse them? How is this any better? Because it's on a blockchain? I mean, so the fact that the bank or the entity that's centralizing the power can screw me and I can see it instead of just being told about it, that makes it better? I think this is ridiculous. To be honest, I think the fact that, I understand from a regulatory aspect. Look, you go to the regulator and say, look, we're completely decentralized payment system, there's no chargebacks, blah, 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 blah. The regulator's always going to say, well, how do you protect the consumer? If somebody gets into this guy's account or the guy sends money to someone for a product and they never gets the product, how are you protecting him? And you go, well, they're adults, If the guy sent money to somebody and got screwed, it's on him, which, to be honest, that's kind of the side I'm on, If you're dumb enough, if you get screwed, you got screwed, Take ownership of it, learn from it, don't get screwed again. I don't need the government to help me, or try to help me from not getting screwed. I'm an adult. I think I can manage. And if I can't, maybe I shouldn't, even be doing these things. if I'm not smart enough to be able to do it. But I can see from a regulator aspect, maybe they have regulator pressure, and that's why they're instituting these things. But then the case comes out, you raised $4 billion. What have you done to really make anything better than what it was? That's the question that needs to be asked. So yeah, I think they're probably in some regulator pressure. Maybe that's why they added these things. Then the question goes, how do they actually elect these people that have this power? If it's just some Joe Schmo who's like, I'd like to reverse transactions, and they give him the power, well, that's not a good system. I think that needs to be reinvented. Maybe some of that $4 billion can go into, maybe paying someone to put on a thinking cap and figure out how they can do this a little bit better than what they're doing now. Number 10 on the list of 10, as crypto prices tumble, Mike Novogratz pounds the table on real estate tokenization. I'm going to take a quick look at this one because I don't generally know who this guy is. Maybe I should. This is the founder of the Crypto Investment Bank, already kind of an oxymoron, Crypto Investment Bank. Galaxy Digital Capital Management. Wow. Okay. Okay, so I just forgot what I'm talking about here. Okay, so he's talking about real estate. Okay, great. All right, yeah. So he does mention security token offerings, which again, I literally like a day. There's this movie called The Purge, where like for 24 hours people can go out and kill somebody, and like it's fine. I don't generally want to kill people. I mean, maybe some days, not every day. But what I would like is 24 hours to just line people up that have made stupid statements and be able to slap them in the face. And just go down the line. It'd be quite a long line, so it might take more than 24 hours. I may need a few people to help me out. But if I hear security token one more time, I swear to God, I'm just going to go nuts. I'm going to start ripping that stuff off the walls. It's going to turn into like quite the epic rant. These are tokenized securities, people. There's no such thing as security tokens. And there probably never will be from a regulation standpoint. And even if there is, there's still a tokenized security because all they're going to do is take existing security laws and add in this new ability to basically the new negotiability and transferability option, which is tokenization. Having said that, I think Mike here has one point that makes sense. And what makes sense here is that everybody's focused on ICOs and Bitcoin and Ethereum. Tokenization of securities and tokenization of assets is probably the biggest impact that the overall crypto market will have on traditional finance as we go into the future. Why do I say that? Well, a lot of people talk about liquidity. Look, a very liquid market like the bond market, most liquid market in the world, doesn't need liquidity from tokenization. It's already the biggest market in the world. What it needs, however, is an easier way to negotiate and transfer these assets. Because if I live in, China, if I live in the US and I want access to the Chinese bond market, I'm going to pay, first of all, I'm going to pay fees probably 5 or 6 times through 5 or 6 different intermediaries. And I'm probably going to take on a whole bunch of risk because I'm probably not going to be able to hold those assets myself. I'm going to have some type of trust relationship or a trustee relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So at the end of the day, unless I'm really committed, I'm probably not going to get into that market even if I want to. And if I do, it's going to carry substantial risk and fees. Now, if there's a way for me to just, pop on a website, buy a tokenized version of that bond, boom, done. Costs me almost nothing. I have immediate transferability and negotiability on secondary markets. So great. And for markets where they're notoriously illiquid, like real estate, Hansacoin, guys, this is one of the reasons why I help these guys out with their tokenization. The real estate market is notoriously illiquid. It's notoriously hard to transfer those assets. It's not easy. You need notaries and you need all this other nonsense. You got to go through these processes and it costs money and everybody wants to charge a fee. Notary wants a fee. The closer wants a fee. The fucking seller wants, everybody wants a fee. There's fees all over the place, right? So you tokenize it, makes it a lot easier. Negotiability, transferability, less fees, less onerous, and you can raise capital in any sums, small, medium, large. That doesn't make a difference, and you can do it across borders, across country borders, across everything. So those use cases are huge, and that's where all this is going. Like I said, and I've said it a million times, crypto at the end of the day is going to be a new tool in the tool belt of all the guys that said crypto was meaningless 2 years ago. Everybody that came on TV and said Bitcoin is the devil, and crypto's not going to go anywhere. This is a fad, and you're going to lose your shirt. All those people are going to end up using this technology, protocols, the underlying technology, and the app layer to create tokenized securities and tokenized assets that are basically going to power pretty much every financial market in the world over the next 5 to 10, 15 years. That's what's going to happen. So I got Mike. I agree with Mike on that one. If he says security token again, though, he's getting lined up. in my purge whenever I can figure out how to do that. Maybe I gotta like move to some weird country like Micronesia or something, then they'll allow me to do this like once a year. I don't know. Okay, carrying on. Moving on to, let's see, our Reddit questions. Okay, Reddit questions. So, how many Reddit questions we have this week? Let's check real quick. We have 10, and there's a few mixed in there. So I'm going to try to get through these as fast as I can, guys, because I haven't eaten yet today. So if I go on some special rants, which I've already probably done, it's because I have like low glycemic count or something in my blood. I don't know what's going on, but I really need to eat something. So number one on these Reddit questions, Bruce Lee 707. Good day, Kevin. I have some thoughts on the current beta testing. Awesome, Bruce. First, Evan is doing a great job. Thumbs up to Evan. I've always said that. I like Evan. Some people have an issue with Evan at some point. Evan's a great guy. He's Australian. Sometimes he says, funny things on chat. Don't take it the wrong way. I think the whole process can be improved. Number one, I think it will help those. I think it will help those who are actively testing to have an idea of what has been fixed and what's going on. A report. Yeah, I agree. I have a meeting on Monday at noontime local with our development team, and I'm going to bring that one up. So good point. And it's something that we kind of been talking about. We actually have it internally. I think we need an external version. I agree with you. Number two, it seems like bugs that were reported since the very early part of the beta test are still showing up. Yep, they are. Mainly because they're prioritized. So most of those bugs I think that you're talking about are probably visual bugs, or they're bugs that basically aren't prioritized because there's other things that we need to do. And we're prioritizing those things for the launch. But yeah, obviously, number one would help number two, for sure. Number three, it seems like the interval of the release of one version to the next is getting longer and longer. The beta group is almost so quiet now that it's quite uncomfortable. You're right. That's because most updates now are based on the back end. So they're not visual to most people. So while there are updates, they're not seeing, new buttons or new visuals. So they don't think it's been updated. So they're not continuing to test, and they're not seeing those updates. So again, 2 and 3 will be helped by number 1. So I agree wholeheartedly on that one, and I will add that into my talk on Monday with our dev team. Number 2, thanks Bruce Lee for that. Appreciate it. Number 2, Udolf Smate. Okay. Hi Kevin. Why am I getting bombarded with emails from a supposed disgruntled employee who claims you've not been paid for 2 months? Even worse is the email claims they sell our data to other companies. Here's the body. Yep. Obviously, we've already talked about this at the top of the show here. There will be a formal statement that will be posted on the website, and we will basically revert everyone to that formal. And it's kind of hard to shorten this down. He wasn't an employee; he was a contractor. He was a contractor that basically stole somebody's identity. Once we found out the identity was stolen, he tried to give us quote unquote his real identity, which is probably also a fake identity. And then we found out they were OFAC sanctioned, which means we can't pay the money. We do actually owe them money for work done, though since they've lied to us about so many topics, they've probably lied about the amount of people that were actually working for us, the amount of time they actually worked for us, so we probably legitimately don't owe them the sum that we even believe we may owe them. The point is that we can't pay them. They are OFAC sanctioned, and because of that, we can't send them money. They say they're not OFAC sanctioned, they say they have no ties, but they have nothing to prove that, and they haven't filed with OFAC, which we've asked, which actually asked them if we could help them do. They haven't made that filing, and we're pretty confident that they are definitely ties to the OFAC sanctioned entity because of that. So yeah, it's a regrettable situation. Even if you take out all this ridiculousness of North Korea and all this other stuff that happens to tie into this very ridiculous Hollywood-esque story, let's say we had an employee, let's say any employee that happened to work here in Talon, that was a great employee and everything was cool, and then one day just decided to sell some data. Right? And why did they have access to that data? Well, maybe they were the data controlling officer. Maybe they were worked for support and had access to emails. Maybe they worked in, whatever. I'm not saying this is the case. What I'm saying is that these things can never be mitigated 100%. Never. Anybody that tells you that data leaks, or it's not even a leak in this case, because the guy had access to the data because part of his team was working on parts of the system where this data may or may not have been available. Some of the data he says he has, we believe he does not. Investigation is still undergoing on that point. My point is to say that, one, we're doing everything we can to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I'm going to be honest with you, like most CEOs aren't. There is no way to fully protect 100% anyone's data that's online. It's impossible. Even when it's not online, it is impossible, because to do that, you would have to take out the human nature element, meaning we'd have to run completely on some type of AI software that processes data, and that's impossible, unfortunately. We do what we can, and we will continue to do what we can to make our system more strict and to mitigate data loss or the possibility that a true disgruntled employee at some point gains access. You can clearly see from his emails that he's a criminal. So, and he's a criminal that may be based either in Russia, China, or North Korea. So, again, not the most lawful of nations. Number 3 from the Reddit list, Yevheny 2019. Kevin, what problem do you have your team? I did get CoinMetro source code and design files. Okay. Also, started share on online by someone. Can CoinMetro members info, please? Please fix current issue. I think this might be Cosmin making this question. I mean, obviously the English here is fucking spectacular. So let me try to break this down. It might have been better if this was written in Chinese. I might have understood it a little bit more. And I don't speak Chinese, so I don't know if you got the joke there, but there's a joke hidden in that. Team doesn't have a problem at all. We basically have a criminal that doesn't understand the law that is OFAC sanctions, and we can't pay him. So now he's reverted to basically, I don't know, breaking maybe 5, 6, or 7 different laws, and I could list them here, but I don't think there's a point. He asked us to fix it. Unfortunately, this person obviously doesn't abide by the law. 2, could care less about the law. 3, is using probably every trick he possibly can to stay under some type of VPN, under radar. He's either in Russia, China, or North Korea. 3 places that are notoriously hard to track down these type of this criminal activity. And even if you do, more than likely it will never get prosecuted. Again, we onboarded a remote employee that we thought, because we had their identification, was a Romanian inside the EU. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. This person was not Romanian, wasn't in the EU, and happened to be connected to an OFAC sanctioned country that's funding ballistic missiles in North Korea. So, yeah, fixing this issue means that we basically learn from what happened, and we try to mitigate this in the future. Mitigate this, obviously, by not hiring people from North Korea, probably number 1 on the list. And I kind of say that somewhat jokingly, but obviously we're not going to hire anybody from North Korea, though we didn't knowingly hire anybody from North Korea. So, but fixing this, I'd like to know what you think we should do to fix it. That would be my question. What in your mind would fix it? Because what we can do is try to make sure that it never happens again. And we can install more protocols, more stricter protocols on our side, so that we segregate data even more than we've already done, which will slow down onboarding processes. It will slow down support processes. It's going to slow down development processes. But it should ensure another level of security. Though, like I said, at no point can you have 100% security. It's impossible, unfortunately. Number 4, cool Zununumen. I probably butchered that, but anyway. Hi, Kevin. Thank you for doing this AMA. Has CoinMetro begun to work with the authorities or taken any other legal actions against the email scammers? Fraud, identity theft, corporate theft should all be criminal offenses. It will be reassuring to hear that CoinMetro is not working only with authorities to try to apprehend the scammers, but also a status update on the investigation. All that is in motion. Again, we're talking about Russia, China, and North Korea. Obviously, in North Korea, we can't do anything. I'm pretty sure we could try to send an email to Kim Jong-un. He probably has like a Hotmail address or something. Yeah, nothing's going to happen there. In China and Russia, I guess there's a little more hope. But at the end of the day, not much is going to happen. But yes, we have contacted OFAC. We have filed with the FIU here in Estonia. We're in the process of looking at what we need to do in China, in Russia, and as well as in Romania, where those stolen identifications originate from. And all that is in process. It's quite a large file. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of communications, of evidence, et cetera, and all that needs to be filed differently in different jurisdictions. So it's in process, yes. I've read that the past explanations about the scammers' previous relationship with CM and the limits of the information that they actually possess. You guys claim that they have some email addresses, but otherwise bluffing about other KYC information he is threatening to expose. However, I have a hard time understanding how he can have one but not the other. How did they get access to personal email addresses, as evidenced by them emailing customers, but not also have access to their KYC related information? Okay, so the difference between KYC related information and actual identification documentation. The identification documentation is held in a completely different database. The access is completely different. That really was limited to one individual. There are encrypted keys on how this is accessed. There's log files. We've checked log files. It seems to us he does not have access to that information. KYC information like printed address information, for example, and phone number are contained in the same database where the emails are. So there is a possibility that he has that information. It's not in the same. It's not all within the same file set, but it's within the same database structure. So there is a possibility that he has that information. That investigation internally is still ongoing, and it's one of the reasons why we haven't completed the filings, because we need to know exactly how the data, when the data was accessed, how it was accessed, whether it was accessed because he had access to it as an employee, or whether it was accessed through somebody else's access, or whether he gained access through other means. Once we have all that information compiled and we know it for sure, at least to the best of our ability, then the filing will continue. Any supporting evidence on how you can be sure you guys know the full extent of data breach? Again, this is what we're doing right now. Now, it may sound crazy, but we do have GDPR laws here, and there are laws on information that we can release publicly. I'm not sure exactly when we file the full, let's say the full investigation report with different entities, if we can actually make that public. If we can make it public, I'm glad to make it public. But I'm not sure we actually can. It's kind of like the thing where, somebody breaks in your house to rob you and you shoot them and then they sue you and win. They were there to rob you, but you shot them and they got injured. It's kind of the same thing. Like we were obviously at the butt end of a criminal enterprise. But if we make all details available about the criminal enterprise, we're going to implicate either directly or indirectly third parties, and that can lead to defamation and other things. So again, we will release what we can, and it's all still in process now. Number 5, hey, this is Free Lad. I've been a quiet investor in XTM since December 2016. I have been closely following what has been going on with CoinMetro and their exchange, but I'm fed up with all these promises that haven't been delivered. At the time of investment, an exchange promised to be up and running with coins minted by the end of February. I think it was April, but okay. Now it's November, and we have seen nothing more than a beta exchange and some constant spell across multiple social media networks, which feels like a face to make investors feel like something is going to happen. Can we not get some answers, or can I kiss a couple of €1,000 goodbye to this sinking ship of a coin? Okay, obviously you're definitely not involved, I would assume, in these AMAs. This, I think, is your first question. I don't remember the username, but there's been lots of updates. There's lots of open information. I think we're pretty transparent on every step of the process, and I've gone over this many times. One, I think you should be quite happy that we didn't mint in February, because had we minted in February and you held on to that token, our token price would probably be 80-90% lower, just like everybody else in the market. If not 80-90% lower, definitely it has the probability that would be lower, especially if we hadn't launched the exchange. Had we launched the exchange in February, we might have been down a different road, that's for sure. So, worst case scenario here, you bought probably at a discount. And now if you bought with Ethereum, let's say, Ethereum is 6 times lower than it was at its high, which means you're already 6x without us even having minted yet, just at the minting or distribution price. So even if the token were to fall at this point, you're probably still going to make a profit. Outside of that, creating this exchange, what has happened in the market, we have the bear market, which is one thing, which definitely wasn't a catalyst for us not minting. Even though it's actually a pretty good one. It wasn't something that was thought of. You have a situation where markets change. You have a situation where regulation have started to come into play faster than most people assume they would. You have an issue where a lot of this regulation needs to be tied back into the engine, and exchanges that aren't doing that now are going to face big issues. when they actually have to do it, and we're preemptively doing it. But we were preemptively doing some, and now we're preemptively doing more, because as we see new regulations starting to emerge, frameworks starting to emerge, and kind of the writing on the wall that 2019 will be quite a year when it comes to regulation. So it's not just about throwing out an exchange, getting a token minted, and yay, the token's minted and everybody can be happy. It's about creating something that's stable, that is ready for the regulation, and that can actually expand. And that's expanding use cases, that's expanding services. All that takes time. It takes negotiation, setting up banks, all these type of things. We could have gone with a crypto-to-crypto exchange, maybe closer to our timeline, and been up and running now. But we'd be competing with the likes of other exchanges that offer many more assets, that are doing things without regulations. They do whatever they want. They speculate all they want. They can say that their token price is going to be worth X or Y all they want. They can pay dividends on tokens all they want because they don't care about the regulations. And that's great. But you're going to see why that wasn't such a great idea over the coming 12 months. And I think that's when you're going to see why we took the time that we took to get the product out to market. Number 6, K and G. Hi there, K. Just for the sake of argument, what if Ether never recovers and gains momentum in the short midterm? Is CM going to lock up the initial funds of Ether until it somehow rises back? Well, we've spent most of those funds. So 2 to 3 years from now, there'll be none of those funds left, guaranteed. I don't necessarily expect Ether to see those highs for quite some time. But we've liquidated what we need to liquidate, and we will liquidate a bit more. And we will be going into some type of equity fundraising round. This question, I guess, is a bit too late. This question would have had a different answer, let's say 6 to 8 months ago. Number 2, based on the recent, not so recent employee situations, does CM have a process in place to make better recruiting decisions? I think there's things we can blame here, but recruiting wasn't one of them. I guess what we've tried to do now, and it had nothing to do with this Kasian situation, to be quite honest, it just has to do with streamlining the way we do business. We're trying to basically centralize, bad word to use, but it's the word that needs to be used, most of our employees within one location. And that just gives us better oversight. But companies like ours, companies that need to expand quickly, that need different types of individuals working for us that we may not be able to find in one location, is going to need to use remote workers at some point. What we found out is that using a publicly traded company as a place to pull freelance workers might not be the best decision, because unfortunately people steal profiles and it's not policed well, and some of those people can end up being OFAC sanctioned. So yes, I think recruiting wasn't necessarily the issue. Definitely you learn from your mistakes. You can recruit the best people and they can still turn out to cause issues. There's no foolproof interview process where you can make sure that someone is not going to screw you at the end of the day, unfortunately. But yeah, I would say it's pushed us to make changes in processes on different aspects of the business, for sure. Every time something happens, whether it's your mistake or whether it's just circumstance, you make changes. You make changes to how you do things. So, number 7 on the list, Matt's a boss. Kevin, I recently was reading about Uber, and basically their approach early on was to charge into markets before regulators were ready and exploit the gaps in local regulatory schemes, which helped them grow exponentially in a short term of time, all the way to 6.5 billion. My question is, do you think it was a wise approach for CM in their early stages to go sweet and compliant from the start, or do you think Uber's what are you going to do about it attitude is better approach for small startups entering a space where there is no regulation? Obviously, the later entails more risk, but allows you to achieve faster growth, and you've got the cash to deal with the regulation and compliance when it hits. It seemed to work for Uber. Do you think it'll work in crypto? Secondly, do you believe CM will be able to grow at the rate it needs to despite its strict adherence to regulation? So I think both methodologies work. I think in this aspect, there's too many people going at it willy-nilly, no regulation. And I think that's going to cause a lot of issues in the future. And I do think that we've went down this path, one, because I believe it's the only path to go, at least when it comes to this type of regulated entity. When Uber came out, there was no such thing as Uber. They were the only ones on the block. These were the guys that created a new industry, and they were the only ones pushing it. So obviously, if they had to push it, they had to go without regulation because it didn't exist. And because they were the only ones doing it, they were the ones at the table when the regulation had to be created. So it made sense for them. Now, if you try to make another Uber today and you call it like, Boober, it's like topless Ubers. It might be a good ICO, topless Uber. If you were to come out with a competitor to Uber right now and try to do the same thing without regulation, you would never see the growth they saw. And that's because you weren't the first. So here we're not the first. We're not Binance. We're not running all over the world just trying to increase our market share and caring less about what we're doing. When you're the second guy to do that, it doesn't have the same effect. So I think for us, we're the first guys, or one of the first guys, to focus on regulation. And I think what that means is we may see a smaller uptake at first, but as soon as the regulation kicks in, who do you think is going to garner the biggest piece of that new market share? The guys that weren't regulated, that are scrambling to try to do so, merging, going out of business, etc., or the guys that were always on that path? So I think what we're looking to achieve is faster growth at a secondary stage of development rather than the primary stage. And we'll see if that actually works out, right? We're going to see. We're going to see what happens. I do think we can achieve the growth we need, and I think we can do that because we're not just looking at crypto. We are looking at already regulated business aspects like challenger banks, for example, and those areas will help us garner additional market share, which will help us bring new eyes into crypto. So yes, do I think we're going to see the same growth rate as someone who got into this business a year and a half ago, was one of the first ones to do it, and basically pushed a bunch of money and ran into markets with willy-nilly with no regulation? No. What I do think, though, is that longer term, we will see bigger market share over time. Number 8, what are your thoughts on the upcoming BCH Hash War? Well, I guess upcoming is probably the wrong words now. I guess by Friday, maybe it's already over. Yep, good one. This is, by the way, from This Is Not My Username on Reddit. Craig, I guess you are more aligned with Craig, who is trying to stop ABC from implementing anonymization into the base BCH protocol. Well, I think I'm against the whole. I'm against the whole thing that there is the ability to just create 2 different forks and let's see which one works, because obviously it creates market turmoil. I like the idea that there, decentralization and that there's no centralized authority. But this is an argument for a centralized authority, to be quite honest. This is an argument for at least you need majority consensus on one side or you don't do a fork. Because what this is causing now is market instability. And anything that allows for market instability should be stopped in a mature market. When you allow any type of outward catalyst that can cause market instability to happen, what you end up happening is you always have an unstable market. And unstable markets, aren't really the way forward when you want to mature a marketplace, unfortunately. The whole developer blackmail thing is embarrassing. Yes, it is. And it's scaring people, even if the only thing they got away with was email addresses. Now, maybe you realize that it's a bad idea to hire out of third world countries. We didn't hire somebody out of a third world country, just to make this clear. We hired somebody from Romania off of a regulated and publicly listed company in the United States of America. So we found out later who we actually hired, but we did not hire them from a third world country. Especially if you don't meet them face-to-face. Please keep as much as possible of everything that's central to the development of the company exchange in-house, outsourcing it for support, less essential stuff. No wonder it took them so long to develop the front end. They probably worked half the hours they said they did. Yeah, I guess there's some validity behind that. But at the end of the day, we were tracking those hours, and yes, maybe they didn't work, but there was a lot of work involved, and we did go through many different iterations. And we didn't have all these people from day one. So it's not like they were there from January 1st or December. It took time to actually bring this entire team together, whether the size of the team was truthful or not. It took time to put it all together. 3, the beta process is slow and inefficient. There should be a real ticketing and bug tracking system. There is. It's internal. True, everything about the development of the website has been disappointing so far. You seem like the perfect person for the business end of things, and maybe you need to just get someone to manage the software end of things. We do need what I would consider to be a COO that has, let's say, more tech experience, and we've been looking for that person. And while I can't look, I think over the years I have a knowledge of the tech, and I could actually dig in there, but I have to make a choice. I'm either digging into just the tech side and no business development and no liquidity and no banking arrangements and none of that, and we have a very nice exchange that gets put out right on time, and it works, but we have no bank accounts, no payment service provider accounts, and no liquidity. So, I have to bide my time. But you're right, there are better people out there to run let's say, the pure tech side. And we're looking for those people. Haven't found them yet. So if you know somebody, please send them along. 8 months of delays, the site is still buggy, and now developers have run off with some personal info as well. I'm worried about the state of the website. Will be in the launch in December, unless, of course, it gets delayed again. I'm not worried. Obviously I have a bit more insight into what goes on than what's outside. And I know what is outside, delays here or there. You have this Cosmine issue. Obviously, that doesn't bode well for what it looks like from an outward perspective. From an inward perspective, though, we're actually getting better at the way we do things. But we still need to hire more people. We still have holes in our overall ecosystem that we need to fill. And this takes time, unfortunately. We don't have a team of 85 developers in-house. We need to build to get to that point. And the market here in Estonia is difficult. And so that means, you have to take on people from outside. Again, we thought we hired somebody from Romania. It turns out we hired somebody from North Korea. How do you mitigate that? Well, you try to mitigate it. You learn from your experience. You try to mitigate it so it doesn't happen again. I had a nightmare a couple of days ago. CoinMetro finally launched, but there was a flat $50 deposit fee for all fiat deposits purchased, like on COSS. Truly horrific. I woke up in a cold sweat. Just thought I would let you know. A more positive tidbit is that a relative of mine saw an ad of yours on Facebook, and the name seemed to have stuck, and he thought it seemed like a pretty interesting investment. So those Facebook ads seem to actually be reaching some people. Well, good to know. And we won't charge a flat $50 deposit fee. So that nightmare can be, we can mitigate that one. Number 9, OX0XO. Hi, Kevin. Can you confirm the blackmailer is this guy from Romania? No, I can confirm that the blackmailer stole this person's identity. That's what I can confirm. So there really is a Cosmine out there. He really does exist. He really is a developer, a designer. He really has a real job, and he does fantastic designs. And our friend, the unofficial Cosmine, basically stole his identity. I've actually tried to contact the real Cosmine, but he hasn't gotten back to me. So I think maybe he thinks, I don't know what he thinks about my messages. Maybe he thinks they're untrue, or maybe there's something that I'm trying to do malicious behind it. But if he's listening to this at some point, please contact us. Serendipity Me, number 10 on a list of 10. Imagine that the exchange was fully functional and BCH was a listed asset at the time of the fork. Would users be given all the hard forks or only some? I would say they'd have to be given both. Would you immediately list some of the forks? What's the general policy on major forks of traded assets? I think in this instance, if there's a fork and it's a hard fork and there's multiple forks, that multiple forks need to be listed. You can't just list one, because then if we're fighting against centralization of market authority, then us as an exchange cannot decide which fork is the one that's actually going to take precedence. We need to list both. Once there is one that takes precedence, then obviously the other one may get delisted at some point. Okay, moving on to all these nice questions that seem to have piled up while I've been here. Or some of these don't look like questions, actually. I'm going to look at YouTube first, guys. So just looking here. Somebody called Trump Jesus. All right, cool. Then it goes on to say Trump loves all kinds of race. Truly fall in love with people. He's acting like Lincoln, like Saint. Jesus is my Lord. Okay, all right. This is just getting kind of weird. Anyway, he's telling the truth. Somebody's an atheist. So somebody who doesn't think Trump is Jesus is an atheist. That's weird. Okay, let's see if there's an actual question in here. Flash sale password. We don't have a flash sale, if one happens. Okay, Cosmine. Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool password. We might use that one. Juan Alberto, please explain in depth, if I place a buy order before the order executes, can I place a sell order at the same time based on the buy order, even before the buy order is executed? It depends. If you have an OCO order, one cancels the other, yes. If you're looking to place a buy order and you want to place a sell order so that you can liquid at the same time based on the buy order, it's an OCO order, so it's one cancels the other. So yes, you can put a buy or sell order, and as soon as one is executed, the other one will automatically cancel itself out. BKCM, Brian Kelly, Capital Management. Thanks, Howard. Never heard of those guys, but okay. Bjorn, are we still on track for December 10th? So, December 10th. December 10th, again, I'm going to repeat this again because I said it the first time, but I don't know, sometimes this never gets into like the consensus afterward, is an internal date for when we envision everything will be ready. It's not exactly a launch date. It is an internal date when everything will be ready to launch. December 31st, end of Q4, is the last date we have to launch this baby and still be on time, as according to our current project map. Notice I didn't say roadmap. I had a conversation with our CTO just yesterday. We're still within the timeline of Q4. December 10th internally is still pretty much on the map, though it may be a few days, give or take, one side or the other. How did your meeting with your potential debit card provider go? Had one meeting, still waiting on another. Meetings went well. I still need to, we're still in negotiation phases. We keep getting a little bit closer, but we're still in negotiations. Jet Fuel saying I sound angry today. Yeah, it's Friday, been busy, haven't eaten yet. And I got to deal with, Cosmin, which, not really dealing with Cosmin, but, just having to think about Cosmin, but not really angry. Just a long day. Matt saying that EOS spent $4 billion on coke and hookers. Well, surprised they're still alive. So, hats off to them. Oh, and Lambos. Okay, so let's say it was probably $3 billion on Lambos and $1 billion on coke and hookers. So, that sounds like a decent ratio, I guess. Somebody asking if XCM is a security token. Nope, not a security token, but all tokens are securities. So put that in your hat and put that feather in your hat and figure out what that means. Matt, big news from the SEC today. Ordered 2 ICOs to return funds for being unregistered security. Yep. I don't know if that's big news. I think I've talked about litigation coming for quite some time and that they were biding their time and eventually litigation was going to hit. And from that litigation, we were going to get what? Regulation. So it's starting. 2 is probably a small number. I think it will be big news once that 2 has 2 zeros behind it. Matt also saying first time they've done it for an ICO that wasn't obviously fraudulent and that funds were raised. Yeah, fraudulent, again, they bide their time. There's so many different aspects of crypto. You have fraudulent ICOs, not fraudulent ICOs, legitimate companies that did an ICO that were a security that didn't register as one. You have all these different aspects, so they have to go down the road one by one. So they're getting there. PBZYT, I would like to hear a clear answer to this fundamental question. In addition to names, email addresses, phone numbers, etc., were the image files from ID card, passport, credit card statement that were uploaded by investors during the KYC also stolen? As far as we see right now, looking at log files and seeing what the backend developers had access to, no, they were not part of what was taken. It's still under investigation, and we're still, basically checking to make sure that for some reason access wasn't also there. It is a different database. It's a different database structure. It's not the same as where the let's say, textual data is stored. Pedro, mitigation for future remote employees. Fly them out to talents that they have to travel on these documents that they provide to you. Could be worth the cost of a flight. I agree. It's one aspect. We are going to obviously try to mitigate remote employees and try to mitigate access to any data for those remote employees. Unless either, there are cases where you can have remote employees that are in a remote office, but that are vetted by their remote office, right? And in that case, you don't really need to go to that extreme. But I do agree with you that in certain circumstances, especially if they absolutely need access to data, that is one way to do it, though they can still steal that data. Happens all the time. Happens at every major company you've ever heard of. Employees that have their ID and everything on file with that company, including governments, have stolen data and placed it online. Krispy Kreme, I applied for a job a while ago, but I haven't heard back. Are the openings for non-developer jobs? Yes, there are openings. I don't know what you applied for, but send a follow-up and somebody will get back to you. Pedro, again, is there any specific reason why CoinMetro is not mentioned on FXPig's website? Good point. FXPig website hasn't been updated in quite some time as far as a complete revamp. Once CoinMetro goes live, I would envision we'll do some cross-marketing, so it more than likely be mentioned on the website. For now, though, not much of a reason to mention it, other than just to get some traffic. But most FXPig clients, if not all, know about CoinMetro because we did talk about the token sale when it happened earlier this year. Okay, so jumping in on Facebook here. So Benedict asking about the email. We've already talked about this, Benedict. I don't know if you missed it. I think even since you posted your question, we've talked about it. So it's all there in the AMA. Okay. Anybody perhaps have another question they want to throw out? We're at 6:20. It's been about an hour and roughly 11 minutes, I think, since we started after a brief little technical interlude. Just want to say again that the official Cosmine statement will be on our website sometime here in the near future. And then we will basically link that statement into Telegram, into social media, etc., so everybody can have a look. I think partially a bit overblown. I do take ownership of it. It is there is some severity there, and I think I definitely take ownership of that. But at the end of the day, the only thing we can do here is try to mitigate that it happens in the future. But understanding that no matter what we do, these things can happen. It's just the way the world works. That's unfortunately human nature and the internet combined together can sometimes create a bit of chaos. CoinMetro domain. Actually, I think at some point it was rerouted, but then to mitigate from DDoS attacks, Cloudflare, and a few other things that were installed, the link was broken. But yes, I think we will do that. Try to take care of that this weekend. Harold, thanks for the mention. And we'll get that thing linked up so that nobody assumes that it may be under the control of some other entity or some other individual like, North Korean Cosmine. All right, guys, anything else before I call it a Friday and go eat something before I pass out from low blood sugar here? Isn't EOS partial centralization a good thing, from Carlos? It depends on how you look at it. From a personal standpoint, I would say when you look at the regulation side of things, the ability for EOS to actually take on market share and possibly move themselves into a more traditional financial market, yes, but the way that the centralization is done, they're giving power to random individuals, which I think is the wrong way to go about it. There probably should be some type of AI, would probably be one of the better things to look at, or there should be some type, either there's a consensus on whether things should actually happen. I mean, you should take the benefits of the blockchain and use them to some aspect. Just giving some guy named Bob the ability to, basically undo payments is not the best way to go about it. And I think with $4 billion under your belt, you can probably do a bit of research and development to figure out a better way to do it. Matt, please don't look at Ether price this weekend. Like literally, don't even pay attention. With the caveat, as always, if you're like a witch doctor, a medicine doctor, or have some type of magical ability, get it up there to 700 and change, and then let me know, and then I'll go ahead and cash out, and then you can shoot it back down to like 35 US or wherever. No problem, Carlos. Okay, guys, we're gonna call it a day. Thanks, everybody. Don't look at the Ether price. You already heard the caveat. Spend time with friends and family. Get away from crypto for a while, and see you guys next week. I'll try to jump in a Telegram as usual. And I'm going to go eat something. And okay, guys, talk to you soon. Thanks for the support, as always. Thanks for putting up with Cosmine and his fucking ridiculousness. And if you make a really good Cosmine meme, I'm going to go ahead and give you a thumbs up. So the funniest Cosmine meme, I think I'm going to give out some XCM. I don't know how much yet, but somebody make a really good Cosmine meme. I mean, it's got to be really, really good. Like, really, I got to laugh. It's got to be like a on-the-floor laugh fest, and you're going to get some XCM. Flaxseed and omega-3s, got it. Talk soon, guys. Cheers.